Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar. I am Dan, one of your hosts, along with Chris Billingham, the late airbender himself. How's it? How are we doing? For us, it's 30 minutes have passed, but for the listeners, it's been a whole week.
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. You?
Nothing
How are
changed
you?
since the last one in the 30 minutes.
No, barely. No. I turned round. I watched the episode. I flicked through Instagram. I had a pee, and I'm back.
You're back. Well, that's not all you
Yeah,
did
man.
in the gap, is it, though, Chris?
Oh, I did. I gave a little song to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sang you a little song about
I
how
mean-
I was ready to record another podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've got it. I think I'm gonna play it.
Yeah, man. It's a musically, it's a spoof of Rise by Gabrielle. Lyrically, it's about how I'm ready for the podcast,
Yep.
and kind of emotionally, I think it says a lot about our friendship.
I think, yeah, I would agree with all that. I think Weird Al has competition. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Definitely.
you got a lot of emotion into this. Would listen for the benefit of the listeners. Chris and I will send each other a text when we're ready to start recording the next episode, just so we know that we're ready to connect the phones and go. This is how Chris decided to let me know he was ready to podcast.
And now I'm ready to podcast again. Look at my mic, it is set up. I got my headphones on. Now I'm ready to podcast again.
What I think I appreciated about that the second listen
To
through.
clarify, the laughter throughout then was Dad's. That's not me laughing at my own. Carry on.
What I appreciated more the second time round was you snapping your fingers completely off beat along with it.
Oh yeah, no. There's a running gag in. Jess has a running gag that just I cannot clap, click, whatever in tune. Like
In time, yeah.
If I'm seeing Queen, it's like when I'm in the audience, it's like boom boom ch ch boom boom ch ch. Like, and that second ch is me, just completely offbeat.
It was incredible. It's like you were so into it, you were snapping your fingers along, but it was just so wrong.
Yeah.
Amazing. So that is how Chris told me he was ready to podcast. I'm ready to podcast. We're here to talk about The Chase, which is episode 8 of season 2. I can't believe we're already nearing the halfway mark of series 2. It's crazy.
Yes.
Like,
Cray.
It's 20 episodes, so we're this is the 8th one. Well, in 2 episodes' time, we'll be at the middle point. Very exciting. So yeah, I mean, we'll start with a quick recap. This is the episode in which the gang are being chased. The Ang gang are being chased by Azula, and they're having to. They keep sort of. They're trying to get some sleep and rest, but every time they stop, they realize they're being followed, and they have to move on. This is all sort of agitating the situation, which is that they're having a little trouble adjusting to having Toph in the group. She has this whole thing about carrying her own weight, but Katara thinks she should work more as a team with the others, and this tension boils over to the point when even Aang gets a bit mad at Toph and yells at her and is like, Appa's carrying your weight, not you, and then she heads off, and they develop a little plan to escape from Azula, who's pursuing, and it all sort of culminates in a big Mexican standoff in an abandoned town that ends up with Azula, Zuko, and Aang, and then later on other characters join. And there's a big old standoff that leads to Iroh getting hurt and Azula having to admit she's outnumbered and bailing. And also we get a great little sequence which we'll talk about with Toph and Iroh in the middle of all that. But that's the basic thrust of the episode. And in the end, of course, Toph learns that it's okay sometimes to let the people who care for you or care about you help. It's not a sign of weakness as you perceive it to be. It's kind of the lesson she learns throughout the episode. So yeah, that's a rough description of The Chase. What did you think, Chris? Because this is obviously, we're back with the gang after our little diversion last week with Zuko a lot, which we both very sort of strongly recommended. How are you feeling about The Chase?
I wish it was half an hour. I wish it was like 10 minutes longer, more so than any other episode, because there's a lot to love, by the way. I'm just going straight in with nitpick corner. We're going straight there. And then we'll talk about the things.
And if you're not a regular listener, we to clarify, we love this show, and we both often praise the episodes quite a lot. But occasionally in good episodes, we do find things to sort of point and pluck at. It doesn't mean the episode is bad necessarily, but that's why we have nitpick corner, which is just like, here's the things that maybe didn't 100% work as well as they might have.
Well, I just think I don't know what I would cut. But like, and that's why I'm like, I just wish it was 5-7 minutes longer, because I don't necessarily know what I would cut. If I had to point a finger, I'd maybe say some of the Katara v Toph stuff and some of the we're being chased a lot stuff, maybe, because like the standoff between Zuko, Aang, and Azula. I don't know if I've got any of those names right.
So
Aang, anyway.
Zuko is Zuko. It amazes me you call him Zuko. I mean, you might be better off going back to Fire Dude, to be honest.
That's fine.
And then Azula is his sister. Mm-hmm.
Their standoff. I literally looked at. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. But how much time? I literally looked. Their standoff, there's 4 minutes, 15 seconds left of the episode. Right. And I'm like, I'm already like, it's a shame.
You're already feeling blue-balled.
Yeah, I'm already like, it's a shame we're not going to get more of this. Like, and then the fight's awesome and it looks great, but then like, that's not even what happens then. Like, the others join, they all meet up. And then that's that, and the end, especially the very ending, like from him getting attacked and Katara kind of saying, "Look, I could help," and then we just kind of cut away to a shot of them sleeping on Appa. Like, it's so quick, that end, and I think I would take out some of the. Oh yeah, and that's because that's the other thing about the ending. Like, Toph comes back. And like we know that she's had a thing and had a moment with Iroh, and Iroh has said, you gotta show people that you're there for them, and she's come back. Like, we know that, we've seen it. Katara hasn't. Like, she's like, okay, I thought you could do with a hand. Katara's like, cheers, and then what? They're friends again. That's resolved because then they're all next to each other, sleeping together as one in the next thing. Like, Katara and her haven't had that moment. Yes, she came back and she saved their lives, and that says a lot. But like, I wanted more. I wanted that story. So much time was dedicated to that at the beginning that I wanted more of a payoff for that at the end. So I think if I had to keep it 20 minutes and had to keep all those beats, I'd maybe remove some of their fight stuff, because it doesn't, it doesn't get resolved in as much depth as I would have liked, and it takes away time that could be spent basically extending those last 4 minutes into 8 minutes and exploring it all a little more. And yeah, I just felt the ending was rushed down.
Yeah, I think the episode maybe bites off a little more than it can chew. I think there's more than 20 minutes of plot here, and it does kind of a little bit show. I think actually for the most part they cover it well, in ways that are explainable. You can get away, I think, with the fight is so epic that I don't actually think its shortness is too much of a problem.
It's more the stuff after. To be fair.
Yeah, it's more going from the fight to them sleeping is just so abrupt. The fight itself actually somehow, despite only being a couple of minutes long, does satisfy the itch I had to see that play out personally. There's enough back and forth and different techniques used, and the visually it's stunning. Like, it is just such a cool fight. And even seeing how it played out, I thought the solution to the fight, which is simply Azula knowing when she's beat, is really smart too. So I think the fight they get away with, could it have been longer? Sure. Would I have taken more of that? Yeah, 100%. But it's just about passable because they do a lot with the few minutes of fight they have, right? And the conclusion is clever. That's kind of how I see it. But you're absolutely right. In terms of the other stuff, it does suffer. You do want more of a wrap up to the plot, and you do feel like it's been shortchanged. Like particularly the Katara top of it all. You don't even need a lot, really. You just need an extra minute, maybe, to have them have a conversation or exchange a few lines, so you understand better that Katara and Toph have made up. It wouldn't take. I don't think it would take much, to be honest. It's close. It's really there. So yeah, you're right. Maybe just trim out some of the stuff from the first section of the episode where it is just they're stopping and starting and stopping and starting. Because while that stuff does a really good job of explaining why they're so tired, you wouldn't have to lose much of that to make room for some more conclusion at the end. It just feels very front-loaded, this episode, and the first act is almost a bit bloated, and the final act is a bit rushed, and it just feels like a slight rebalancing. Not much. Again, we're talking about 30 seconds to a minute might have actually made a lot of difference with that. So I agree with the criticism. I do think you're right. I think I do still love this episode. It's one of my favorites, and it's a great introduction to Toph.
Yeah,
we'll get into Toph's dynamic with the group. Particularly what a great idea to immediately put them to the test by straining their relationship through circumstance. That's genius. There's so much I love about this episode. Toph and Iroh's conversation is absolutely brilliant. The moment when he gets hit by Azula because she's just that freaking evil, and you see Toph's face when she realizes who it is that's just been hit. All of that, really good. But that ending is extremely abrupt. And as a result, it does affect the overall satisfaction I think you might get out of the episode in the end. But I would say, still on the whole, I think for me, it's still a big, big thumbs up. I love this episode because there's just so much good stuff that even though that is a genuine flaw in the episode, the abruptness of the finish, it's not enough to detract from all the good stuff this episode does, for me personally. But if somebody felt the other way, where they felt like it was enough and it was for them a big problem, and it actually made the episode actively like an episode they're less fond of, I would totally understand where they were coming from, because the criticism is totally valid.
Yeah, because I think it's a big I think it works because also seeing them all lined up, you kind of got to some degree, you've got your season 2 Avengers shot, and to kind of get that at the end of an episode where you didn't think you were going to get it is wicked. Let alone, the big cliffhanger of is Iroh okay? I think all of that stuff's amazing, and actually it's kind of like the first. I'm doing the maths. The first 18 minutes or whatever have a fantastic structure. You get the hint with that when they're playing with the fur at the beginning. You get the hint of why they're following them. Then they follow them. Then they discover them. Then they detract. That's great. And then there's kind of this 4-minute epic, brilliant, on your left through the portals fight scene of everyone showing up, which is great. And it's and also even the logic, because there's a moment where you're like, it's a big old world. How are they all together? And it's Zuko is tracking the three. He's tracking the three of them, and then Iroh is tracking him, and then they're all tracking them. So it plays, and that fight is epic. I love how again they're still. We talked about it last week. They really are emphasizing that she is more naturally gifted than him. When Aang goes into the house without a Ruth,
I was going to talk to this.
This
is in my notes.
She pauses just before falling down and stays on the sides, and it's kind of played for comedy, but there's a much deeper meaning to it.
Yes.
Whereas Zooks just sort of runs past and immediately falls down.
Baby Zuki poos.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She does stumble, but she's quick enough to rebalance and find her footing, whereas Zuko charges in head first and ends up getting face planted for it. And what I think is cool about that is there's two sort of factors that play into that. One, she is just more naturally gifted a fighter than he is, and she saw it coming and rebalanced. But it's also it says a lot about Zuko's personality. She stops and thinks and makes adjustments, whereas Zuko passionately charges headfirst into things, often stupidly. And it's so funny because it's such a small moment in an epic fight, but it actually says an awful lot about the characters, the way they both react to that. And you're right. And on top of doing all of that stuff, being an awesome fight, being a great moment to tell us something about both those characters, it's also a funny moment. Like, it's also making you laugh. Like, this episode is, like, you just want to talk about carrying the weight. Like, this episode does a absolute boatload of stuff, like, for all the characters. It's kind of amazing, actually. It's almost incredible you don't even notice that it's feeling rushed until the end, because with the amount of stuff this episode is doing, it should have felt rushed from minute one.
Completely.
It's surprising they managed to hold that problem off until just the very last moment.
Yeah, completely. And it's just all very clever. There's a lot of very good ideas in there. Because at first you are like, how are they tracking them? And then, like, the fur, you're like, oh, the seeds for that got planted earlier. Like,
yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because I don't remember my first viewing of this episode well enough to have this. So as a first-time viewer, I always watch it now and go, well, it's bloody obvious. Like, they set up the fur right up top. But I think, and then I thought, well, actually, it's probably not that obvious to a first-time viewer. I wouldn't be surprised if someone didn't get it until they pointed it out. So was that you?
Yeah.
Did you see it coming?
Yeah,
or?
no, I didn't. No, because I guess because my mind was going, and it's, the answer was hiding in plain sight. My mind was going, well, what's different? What is changed that means they can now track them? And then, it was the fur is hidden. But I guess it's because they do a few clever kind of tricks to make you see but look the other way. When they first explore that the fur's falling off, it's literally played as a joke. So
rather
they don't,
than as exposition.
They go away from this is, it's kind of a bonding joke almost between the four of them before they start falling out. And it's played for laughs. It's played so you're not thinking about the more dramatic consequences. And then when the how they're tracking them comes from the sky, but when they first notice, because they've now got Toph, when they first notice the sort of train or whatever it is, it's Toph touching the ground and hearing it coming on the ground. So you're kind of zeroed in on the earth, the ground, etc.
Yeah, I think you're right. They do it. They do. It's quite clever, isn't it? It's like making Chekhov's gun be part of another scene first, so that the audience aren't waiting for it to show back up. Because if they just established Appa's molting and hadn't really done anything else with it, you'd be waiting for that to become relevant. Because you'd be going, well, you've not done anything with that piece of information yet. Why are you wasting? You wouldn't waste time in a script like this. If it's come up, then it's relevant somehow. So you'd put it together earlier. But you're right, because they turn it into an excuse for a bonding and a laugh and quite a fun gag. For those who don't remember, it's Aang and Sokka immediately use Appa's fur to make silly hair and beard. And Katara's like, oh, God, I'm so glad there's another girl here now. And Toph's like, oh, I don't know. Anyone see? I need a shaver because I've got hairy pits. And she lifts up her arms and she's got Appa fur all sticking out, which is hilarious. Tells us something about Toph, because it's kind of like she's almost like one of the boys a little bit in terms of, like, she is quite, I guess the term is tomboy. I don't like that term, but she is quite... ready to, she's quite rough and tumble and shares that sense of humor with Sokka and Aang. So as a result, it tells us something about Toph and even Katara's perception of Toph. And then it also obviously is funny. So you totally miss. I think this is why I realized on this viewing that probably most people don't spot it, is because it feels like they've already used Chekhov's gun, to borrow a phrase. For those who don't know, Chekhov's gun is the idea that if something in script writing is introduced, if a character finds a gun in the first act, it will be used in the third. Whereas here, they found it in the first act and used it in the first act, so you didn't expect it to come back in the third.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I think as I was watching it this time, even though on previous viewings I've been like, it's a bit obvious, isn't it? I actually changed my mind because I noticed exactly as you did that they kind of hid it in there, which is very clever. For sure.
Definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely, it is. Do you think as well? I loved the notion. Like, they didn't necessarily explore it, but I loved the notion that it's to me, it wasn't just that, she wanted to be a loner and that's why Toph wouldn't help. It's that she's never had to, presumably, she comes from a really rich family where she was overprotected. She's never had to help. She's never had to. Do you know what I mean? Like, I suppose she fends for herself in the fighting, but the actual labour of it all, the actual doing the work of putting up tents and all of that sort of stuff, you assume she's never had to do that because of her background.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a twofold thing. That's kind of implied without being said outright. And then the other explanation that's given, or not explanation, but the other reasoning that's given is that, people see her as weak. They want to take care of her. She sees it as weakness, having assistance and being in a group where you're all looking after each other, because that's what's happened to her whole life. She's been looked after, and she wants to carry her own weight. She wants to take care of herself. I mean, that's the line. I think people see me. I wrote it down. People see me and think I'm weak. They want to take care of me, but I can take care of myself by myself. And then that Iroh obviously responds with, "There's nothing wrong with the people who love you help you. Not that I love you. I just met you," which is a lovely line. I think that's really fun. She's a complicated character, but I have a real maybe this might be a big part of why Toph is a favorite character of mine. I really relate to that idea of wanting to carry your own weight. Chris will remember, when I was younger, lived with didn't stay my entire youth with my family. There was a period where I'd stayed with Nadia, my girlfriend's family, and I sort of was very grateful for them letting me stay there. And we talked about this when I moved in with Chris when we were at uni, which is this idea of I became the invisible housemate. Like, I learnt to sort of, sort my own food out, do my own dishes, wash my own clothes, and sort of none of my stuff would be around the house. I just sort of and I learnt that through not wanting to impose on the people who were very nice to let me stay there. And then that carried through into when I was living with Chris in uni, when, and I was very much the same way. It took me a while to learn that we could do things as a group, and you know what I mean? And so I do relate very much to Toph in these circumstances. I think that's it's something I've felt in my life, about wanting to make sure I carry myself and not wanting to lean too heavily on others. So we may be at the root of why Toph is a favourite character of mine.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, it's a fascinating moment,
and you could earthbend, which was very helpful.
Well, yeah. Well, we didn't even rent a flat. I just made one with earth. I just sort of built a house. It was that was useful. We didn't even have to pay rent, although it didn't really have water and it was quite dirty.
It is weird, without going on a whole tangent. It is weird. As a household, we didn't really there were people that did most nights we all eat together. We would often eat together, but we would never eat together, if that makes sense. We would often eat our separate meals that we'd prepared separately at the same time. But we very rarely did the whole, let's have a big old, one person cooks for everyone type of thing.
Yeah,
interesting.
Nadia had a similar experience where they had occasions where someone would cook for the others, but mostly everyone just sorted their own food out.
There was the infamous weekend where we had party food 3 days in a row. Party food themed to starters on the first day, mains on the second, and then desserts on the third.
Yeah, we talked about this on Nothing But Sight. There was a weekend where we decided the Friday we were going to eat nothing but starters. We were going to do 3 courses over 3 days. So for an evening meal on the Friday we ate nothing but starters. On the evening on the second day we ate nothing but mains, and then the third day.
But party food themed starters and mains. So it was mozzarella sticks. It was quiches. It was sausage rolls.
The third day was the worst because we had dessert. So it was just a lot of sugar that we felt, and we were all hyper and excitable, and the come down, the crash from the sugar high.
I was bitter with you, and we will do this quickly, but I'm hoping it will at least be an interesting anecdote for people, because I had this whole thing of I'm not just eating dessert food, and Dan was very much like, no, if we're doing it, we're doing it.
Commit to the weirdness.
I was like, well, maybe if I had a bigger lunch, and Dan's like, no, you got to commit, it's got to be weird, and I was like, all right then. And then at like 3:00 in the afternoon, Dan appeared with a Subway. And I was like, what are you doing? And you were like, well, it's just lunch, isn't it? I was like, it's 3:00. Yeah, but it's just lunch. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I'm
because
like, no.
Yeah, okay. I realise now that why that's... But from my perspective, I genuinely just had lunch late that day. Like, I'd woken up late. My entire meal schedule was, like, late. I wasn't trying to be a dick.
It was cheating. It was cheating at your own game. But yeah, so other than that, we didn't really... That was very much a time where we prepared food and ate together. Maybe that's why we never did it again, because we were like,
we never did it again because it was fucking the sugar come down was horrible. We'd eat nothing but sugary stuff for our meal, and then we were all hyper for about half an hour, and then we were all just miserable. And we were watching, I think it was like the finale of X Factor, and the wrong person won in our eyes, and we were all just miserable.
I think there might have been an argument that night between you and my then girlfriend. I think.
No, there was no argument. That we were all on the same. It was just like we were all low energy, tired, and not happy, and not properly fed. It was Anyway, back to the subject.
Anyway,
so I very much relate to Toph as a character, and her entire exchange with Iroh in this episode, I really do. It always sort of sits with me, and this whole notion of I carry my own weight, I really do get it. It is hard sometimes to open up and let others help you, particularly if you've been sort of perceived as weak previously, and you sort of want to prove yourself that you're capable. And obviously that's doubly true for Toph as a blind person. Obviously, people often assume she can't do things that maybe she can do, and that must be a struggle many disabled people go through. So I mean, I relate to it on a different level, obviously, but I'm sure anybody struggling with how people perceive them if they have a disability would relate to that even more so. And it's amazing that we're getting to that stuff so quickly with Toph. It's only her second episode, and we know her so well already. We understand her so well, and that's just because of clever writing. And the genius idea of putting her with Iroh. That's just that, chef's kiss. Like, that's beautiful. That's a great notion.
Yeah, it was a really good moment, wasn't it? Like that their whole scene was very sweet, very, very fun, and I think they did a good job of like. And as you say, a lot of the work is done in, where he makes the joke about only just meeting her and she laughs and finds that endearing. Like, because, they've got one scene and then later on you're meant to feel her upset just as much as Zuko's is. And it works. Like, you feel that she would be upset. They managed to get away with that, which, if the scene between them wasn't handled as well, would have been very difficult, I think.
Yeah, I exactly. A lot rides on that scene for this episode for me. If that sequence doesn't, if her conversation with Iroh isn't, if you don't buy it, if you don't buy the exchange, you don't buy her learning a very important lesson, you don't buy him, Iroh, also, having the emotional catharsis he does when he talks to Toph, because she says to him, maybe you should tell him. Maybe you should communicate with Zuko how you feel. She doesn't say Zuko. She doesn't know it's Zuko at that point. But she gives him advice as much as he gives her advice in the end, and it's really solid advice. And that, oh, by the way, we should give Chris the applause because he totally called it. Of course, Iroh has been tracking Zuko, which is one of your predictions.
Did I call that?
Yeah, you literally said I'm going to plant a flag. I don't have many predictions, but I think Iroh is following Zuko.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You said that a couple episodes back, and you were exactly right. And the reason, that conversation, how they paralleled Zuko to Toph as well through this was, I thought, really interesting too. And her whole thing of like, is he lost? And he's like, yeah, a little. And it having a much deeper meaning than simply physically being lost. They do that scene is the absolute linchpin of this entire episode, and it works beautifully. And of course, then it ends with one of my favorite lines that ever comes out of Iroh's mouth, which is, "Sharing tea with a fascinating stranger is one of life's true delights." I can't like. Yeah, I don't even know where to start with that line. It's just beautiful. It's Iroh in a nutshell. It's what a lovely notion that like.
Did they play on this tea thing as much in series 1?
Yeah,
they did. Right, I just didn't notice maybe then.
Yeah, it's always about tea. That was all he wanted in the first season. That and when he needed his lotus chip for his pie show game. Those are the two sort of things. But yeah, no, he was tea obsessed in the first series as well. I think the stories have pivoted on it more. It was more referenced, whereas in this season, obviously his love of tea got him into trouble in that first episode when he turned that deadly plant into a tea, and obviously here because it's what brings him and Toph together. Whereas I think in the first season he would just say, "Come Zuko, we'll have a nice cup of tea." You know, it was a bit more. Okay. I think that's maybe why it kind of washed over you in a more casual way, whereas it actually seems sort of plot relevant now.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, it's such a wonderful thing. What they've done with his character and the exchange with Toph is absolute masterclass in writing, just top to bottom. I love everything about it. So yeah,
absolutely. What else do you love?
Let's be honest. 3-on-3 plus soccer is one of my favorite laughs in this episode. When they go to stand up to Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee, and Toph's like, 3-on-3, we got this. And Sokka's like, hey, I'm here. There's 4 of us. And she's like, yeah, all right, I guess. I just didn't count you because of your lack of bending, but cool, yeah. 3-on-3 plus soccer. Which I thought was fantastic.
I do slightly wish, though, that because he then kicks ass later, like when he does the thing with the knives and stuff.
Right.
And I do almost wish she saw that, though. Or there was a moment in the fight where they were all together where she saw the soccer's worth.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's one of those things that is like she'll learn that over time, I guess, rather than it's a plot for this specific episode. But yeah, I agree with you. It would have been nice to have a moment like that.
I think that would have, because like Sokka's been fairly calm with her. I think part of the joke and the amusement of that moment is Sokka's the last to lose his cool with her, and I think that it's going back to what I said at the beginning. One of the reasons I'm like, it would have been nice if she'd have seen Sokka fight is because I guess I'm just aching for more resolution to that. And that would be, if she saw Sokka kick ass, it's a really easy way of getting a quick, Sokka does something cool in that fight, and she goes, hey, nice one. Like, she feels it.
You know what the actual answer to that might have been? But she's already gone at that point. It might have been having Sokka devise the plan, to lead them away with the false trail. Because I thought that plan was quite clever, and I was suspicious that it was Aang's. I was a bit like, this isn't Aang's usual thing. So maybe what they maybe could have done is have her fall out with Aang about Appa being the cause of their woes after developing their escape strategy, so she could have Sokka. She could witness Sokka go, actually what we'll do is we'll leave the false trail and we'll go off with Appa in a different direction after washing him, and then and she'd be like, oh, that's a really good plan, and he's like, yeah, I'm here for a reason. Something like that might have
definitely
might have scratched that itch.
I think the thing you lose is Aang. The only thing you lose with that is Aang comes up with the plan because he's always intending on facing her. Like, he's never trailing them away, I don't think. I think he's always leading
he's trailing them away from his friends and leading her to him and him alone. Yeah, absolutely.
So if Sokka comes up with the plan, that element is clunkier.
Right, yeah, that's true.
But I think just little moments like that, and even like, I think even, not that I'm going back to it because we've already discussed it, but even saying to Katara, even if Katara goes, she does something kick-ass when she returns, and Katara says, I think we definitely do need you. And she says something like, it's nice to be needed. And they smile at each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't even need much. I think you could slip it in. She sees Sokka do something cool, whatever.
Yeah, it would have tied it together a bit better.
Yeah. But you're right, that fight in general is awesome. And it's a really I really did kind of gasp and go, when, Iroh gets knocked down. It's a powerful moment. It's
a powerful because it does make Azula seem truly, like, as if we needed more reasons to hate Azula. She attacks, the oldest, maybe arguably the weakest, although Iroh has shown himself capable in the past as well. But, she attacks arguably the most lovable but also most defenseless member of that group,
Yeah,
Like,
well, I don't know why in that moment Iroh didn't do his produce fire from his hands trick, you know?
I guess she caught him off guard. I'm ignoring the reference
maybe.
to the movie.
That must be it. Yeah.
Yeah, I get, but it is a great moment, and again, it does make her seem particularly cruel because the Avatar seems like the obvious person to strike if you're gonna get one shot off to distract them to allow you to escape. But I guess she thought maybe Iroh's reactions are a bit slower than they used to be, and maybe she could catch him out, which she obviously does. Also,
it's a thing that's going to distract their attention and move their attention away, which it does.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I feel like if she'd attacked Aang, maybe Zuko wouldn't have. Maybe that is why she chose that. Maybe it was tactical, because when I think about it, actually, if she'd have attacked Aang, Zuko would have still chased her rather than being like.
Yeah, that stops them all.
Yeah, that stops everyone. Yeah, you're right.
I loved Katara offering to help as well. I really loved that.
And yeah, that's what I was going to say, actually. I think one thing I do think I love is I really do like that last exchange. As quick and maybe rushed as it feels, that I can help. And Zuko being like, get away, and shooting fire at them, like, and forcing them to retreat. It is a really powerful moment because it shows a lot, doesn't it? Both about Katara and Zuko.
Yeah, it's awesome. And especially when you think about their last interactions, which was at in the finale
of the previous season,
beating the crap out of each other. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What else do you love?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I thought I made a note. This isn't a note from the episode. This is a note I've made during this podcast that we never got back to. You mentioned, Sokka is the last one to lose his temper with her. And I was thinking about it and going, yeah, that's right. And then I was thinking, actually, Sokka might be the only one who doesn't lose his temper with her. Because she falls out with Katara over this whole, we're a group now. You've got to kind of help, If anything, actually, the irony of that is Katara is very much saying, you're capable of helping us. It's actually the opposite of how Toph takes it. Because Katara is essentially saying to Toph, you're as capable as any of us of unloading this thing. You're not getting it easy because you're blind or whatever. So I think that's actually quite good from Katara's perspective. But then Aang falls out with her when she starts blaming Appa, because as Aang rightly points out, Appa's working really hard to save their butts, and fly through the night. He's doing most of the work. But Sokka, I don't think ever falls out with Toph.
Well, I said he gets angry with last to lose it with her, or whatever my phrasing was. They literally animate him in the way they've been animating Katara, where he gets those stress anger lines, and his entire face goes red when he's like, "I can help." I viewed that as getting angry with her,
right? Because I thought he was just angry that they were all fighting, because he sort of tells them to stop fighting, and when Toph tries to leave, he tries to stop her. He's like, "No, don't leave. Let's talk about this." He's the one that gets in her way. She then obviously immediately, very comically, uses her earthbending to brush him aside. But
but it doesn't mean I wasn't saying they all turn their back on her. I was saying there's a moment where all of them get angry with her, and Sokka's the last one to have that moment. And his moment is when he's angry that she's suggesting he can't help. And it's that whole three people.
Oh, right. Because it's played for comedy, I suppose you're right. I didn't really take it as that, but you're absolutely right, actually. Yeah, she manages to piss off Katara initially, then Sokka, then Aang. Yeah, you're right. Because it was played for comedy, I kind of dismissed that as a moment of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my point was there was a moment where she caused all three of them to rage, essentially.
Yeah. But even then, he's still on her sort of. He's still not on her side as such, but even after that, he still wants them to talk it out and work it. He's the only one that in that final discussion that leads to Toph leaving, that's not pushing Toph out.
Yeah, but I think it's anger fueled with even the other two. Aang immediately slumps against Appa and is like, I can't believe I let my earthbending teacher go.
Right.
I don't get the vibe.
Instant regret. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I don't get the vibe that either Katara or Aang are like, yeah, fuck off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but again, all of those things are more all of those things are clearer if it's allowed to have a proper resolution.
Right. Yeah, correct. You're exactly right.
You know, that if there's that moment of, look, you know, I just feel like you could do more, I'm really sorry, then all of those things are clearer.
Yeah.
We're guessing how they felt in their anger because we don't see how they felt and how they explain it in a resolution.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, that is correct. That lack of resolution hurts the episode in that sense, for sure.
I think so.
So, other quick notes. The stars line from Katara, where she's like, oh, the stars are beautiful tonight. Shame you can't see them, Toph. Super harsh. Shut up, Katara.
Yeah,
I almost nominated for that line Katara in Knobhead of the Week because I thought I resisted the urge, but I think that is a borderline Knobhead of the Week or Hall of Knobheads moment.
I think that's the problem. I think it's Knobhead Hall of Fame, and the problem is once you're in Knobhead Hall of Fame, you're in Knobhead Hall of Fame unless someone does something special, and we can't. If it was Knobhead of the Week, which I think we didn't want to do because we didn't want to make a
force that every week. Yeah.
So yeah, if it was Knobhead of the Week, she'd absolutely be there. But yeah, it doesn't earn her a place in the Hall of Fame.
No,
yeah.
But it is Knobhead behaviour. Not
absolute
acceptable.
pure Knobhead.
Yeah. I do love that they
100% helmet. Oh Jesus. Carry on quickly.
Yeah, quickly. I do love that we get to see Toph being an absolute badass again. How instrumental she is to their escape when they try to find out who is following them.
Yeah.
You know, the time they sort of stop and turn around and confront Azula, and then they all run to Appa, but Toph is the one that creates that giant wall, and then uses the earth to flick herself up after May throws all those knives and they hit the rock. Toph's escape there is utterly badass. Yes, once again, proving herself as one of the most capable members of this team by far. Let's have a look.
I like the notion. Quick note from me. I like the notion. I felt it. They didn't even need to say it in the dialogue after. I felt it in the fight, man. I hope they explore Sokka and whatever her name is.
Ty
one
Lee.
of the three. Yeah, afterwards, and she was like, he was kind of cute. I was like, yeah, like I hope they make that a little romance, a little thing.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Because they have that whole fight is, you forget it's in the episode, but there is also a fight scene between Sokka, Katara, and Ty Lee and May when they split up, and that's a really fun little fight that just shows how impressive Ty Lee and May are. And if it wasn't for Appa and his giant tail, those two would have been in trouble. They were as powerful as Katara is and as cunning as Sokka is. They were both absolutely outclassed by May and Ty Lee.
Yeah, they held their own, but they were going to be beaten.
Yeah, almost certainly. So once again, Appa saves the day, but also, that's a great little fight. Maybe that's one of the things you probably could have cut, to be honest. Actually, because what does other than that Ty Lee moment? Actually, if you were looking to shave a minute off this episode,
I'd have cut that scene right down or gone. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because then it doesn't matter. They went off in a different direction. They were being followed by Ty Lee, and the idea is they eventually catch. But then you'd need to explain where Ty Lee and May went. Yeah, I guess you need.
Yeah, you do need to cover where they've been, but yeah, maybe they run away. Yeah, or they hop on Appa and they run away, and there's no fight. But it's worth it for that's the thing. Again, as I said at the very beginning, I don't have a clear cut answer for what you cut out. That is one of them. That is something you could have maybe restructured and made it maybe not a fight scene. As much as I enjoyed that fight scene, maybe that's something the episode could have lost to gain a bit of time at the end. Yeah.
I also thought it was very cool to go back just a scene or two before that to establish, the plan to leave a fake trail is smart. A trail to lead them to Aang but save that's a smart plan. But evidently Azula is smarter, and I really love that they did that. She immediately clocked that it wasn't a legit Appa trail and that Appa had actually gone the other way because she saw the treetops bent over, which is such. Again, how many times have I said this series that once again we're making Azula look even smarter, even more deadly? It's starting to build up. Azula's starting to feel like a real bloody threat.
I just accidentally knocked my mic, so if that made a big clunky noise, I apologise.
And by having them only beat her by sheer numbers in this episode and her smartly get away, they've not diminished her threat because she's not been beaten. She was
they've made
outnumbered.
it more threatening. I don't know if you needed her whole, because it was so obviously fake. Her whole, you've got me, I know. I don't know if they needed that because it was just so obviously fake.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was.
But I did enjoy her just being like, I know when I'm beaten. Like she says it in that like way where you're like, oh yeah, okay, she's tactically assessed that, even though it's obviously fake. The fact that she gets to utter that sentence is, I think, clever because I think that shows again her sort of tactician. She understands that she's not got a chance to fight her way out of this the normal way, so she's gonna have to play it differently. I loved her making fun of Zuko, putting her hand over her eye and being like, I must find the Avatar to restore my honor. Like Azula saying something funny and then Aang looking at her dead-eyed and her being like, it's funny, you can laugh, is another great moment in this episode.
That made me laugh a lot.
Yeah. Also, when she calls Zuko Zuzu, that made me laugh. And it did make Aang had a little snicker as well. Zuzu. I like the way they animate Aang with his bags under his eyes. I noted about that. I thought that made him. They really did sell how tired the characters were.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that might be that everything else that's in here is stuff we've covered, like the suddenness of the ending and Iroh being hit and stuff.
Well, in that case, Dan, let's triv it up.
Let's triv it up indeed. All four elements are seen attacking the same target. All four elements are bent in the order of the Avatar cycle.
That's cool.
So Aang, obviously, from left to right, Aang, air, Katara, water, Toph, earth, and Zuko, fire, and they're in the Avatar cycle. But that might be a coincidence. Maybe is that a coincidence?
Nah, I doubt it. Nah.
You reckon?
Yeah, I reckon that's deliberate. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, we can't. It's like you wanted to talk about that more. Like, you're not sure. I reckon it was. We're both theorising. Nothing more to say.
Yeah.
Cool. Next piece of triv.
Sorry, I'm just easily amused. When Katara...
you tried to Google whether you could prove whether it was deliberate or not.
No. Although now I feel like I should do that, but no, I suspect that answer isn't actually out there. It's one of those things. Where was I? When Katara first talks to Toph about helping out, Toph is chewing a piece of wheat, which is a common component of Jet's kind of character. He always has that piece of wheat hanging out of his mouth. Additionally, Toph and Jet both possess rebellious natures, so it may be sort of a visual way of sort of cluing us into that that fact, basically.
That felt like they're connected, and you accidentally spoiled that. Then that's cluing us into that.
No, that's me going, actually, is there much of a connection there? I'm reading you exactly what's in it. I promise you. Toph and Jet both possess rebellious natures is what's physically written in the trivia. And I just sort of, as I read it, I sort of thought about it and went, it's not that clear-cut of a link, but...
Right.
That was
like you'd realised.
That was me questioning the triv. I don't know if you've clocked them, but there have been at least 2 moments in this podcast, in the 28 episodes we've done, where that has exactly happened, where I've had to bail out of a triv halfway through or cover a triv because actually it was leading into a spoiler and I've realised halfway through and stopped myself. That has happened at least twice.
But as we've established quite a bit, I'm often not listening, so...
Yeah, no, that is very clear. That is evident, Chris. Where was I? Sorry, I should delete these as I go so I know what I'm up to. According to Avatar Extras, an earlier storyboard had other animals around Team Avatar's first campsite. However, the writers decided to not put them in the episode. That's obviously that joke from the beginning about the animals and stuff. Avatar Extras stated that the fight sequence between Aang, Zuko, and Azula was meant to resemble a Mexican standoff. More commonly used to refer to a 3-way duel, and is modelled on it's a concept that often comes from old sort of westerns. It's also noted that the battle was challenging for the show's creators due to the fact they had to coordinate each of their movements and show all 3 of them fighting each other at the same time. So it was a very challenging fight to animate, and that I think the work pays off. If I'm completely honest.
Definitely, I would agree.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Sorry, Here we go. My whole screen went absolutely nuts then. When Sokka... According to Avatar Extras, the name of the abandoned town is Tuzin. It's also stated that it was a mining town after all the minerals were gone. People just sort of abandoned it overnight, basically. That's why it's an empty town. And for those who don't remember, because I keep referencing it but not explaining, Avatar Extras was this thing they did where they replayed the episodes with like bubbles that would pop up with little bits of trivia and information about an episode. Just because I think if you're a new listener, you might be like, Avatar Extras, what's that? But yeah. When Sokka makes a wig out of Appa's shedded fur, the wig vaguely resembles Marge's hairdo from The Simpsons. I left that one in mostly because that's shit, Trev.
I did think that though.
Yeah, do you reckon that's a deliberate reference? I'm not googling whether that one's deliberate, but like.
I don't think it was a deliberate reference, but I noticed it. I was like,
right.
It looks like Marge.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay, maybe enough. Fair enough. Maybe that's not a bad one then. Azula's smile when she finds Aang at the abandoned village mirrors Ozai's smile from the previous episode, Zuko Alone, while he's watching Azula firebending. I thought that too. They sort of share a sort of malicious seeming smile, and a lot of scenes during the chase closely resemble the chase from the 1969 western Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. One example being, after robbing the train, another train pulls up behind that with only one boxcar that opens up, and the cavalry start chasing after the lead characters. Obviously that's very similar to the scene here where Azula's tank train sort of pulls up in this episode, and then she gets out and starts chasing them. So there are several sort of links from that to Butch Cassidy. It sounds like there are more than just that one because it says one example, but I kind of wish they'd listed more because I'm kind of intrigued as to how else it references Butch Cassidy. But if anyone knows, I guess throw it in the comments below. And then finally, the cast of Friends each made $1 million per episode in the final 2 seasons, and now make about $20 million per year as a result of reruns. It actually earns Warner Brothers about $1 billion a year. Even now as a result of reruns, and it's all apparently thanks to David Schwimmer encouraging the cast to negotiate as a team.
I mean, how many weeks are you going to keep it up for?
Keep what up
my
for?
question.
What's the problem?
Just slipping in other trivia at the end.
I don't know what you're talking about, Chris.
Was it only? I thought it was more than the last. Was it only the last season they got $1 million each?
Looks that way. Final 2 seasons.
Final 2. I was going to say, I thought it was more than just 10. Because 10 was sort of like, they went into 9 thinking that might be the end, and then 10 was like the bonus season. So, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. It's one of those, we talked about it recently, I think, on something, who knows what, but I think, it's, the industry, is any human being worth that much money an episode? No. Should the actors earn a piece of the pie if the network are going to make that much money from it anyway?
If the network are making $1 billion for a year, then the cast getting $20 million per year for reruns seems more than fair.
It's exactly that discussion we had. It's Jason Alexander talking about the request for Seinfeld. What is their contribution worth if the network are making billions? And that then you go, well, $1 million an episode seems reasonable. Like, all right.
So that's the triv.
Nice. What's the
you seemed upset with the triv at the end there, Chris. Was there a problem with the triv this week?
It's just how, because you usually so adverse to things. I tried to make What Was Keenan Plan a thing. You didn't like it, and now you've decided that you're going to slip in triv at the end.
I don't know
and then I'm
about.
overthinking
it, Dan.
The
triv.
Then I'm like, have you been doing it for weeks? And I've truly not been paying attention. Then I'm thinking, I need to go back. You might have been doing this for the entirety of season 2. But I don't think you were. I think I would have noticed that.
Yeah.
Would you? I take it if I'd have just gone last week, if you'd have said to you before you won, and I'd have just gone, oh, cool. Would you have just not said anything and just been like, I'm going to see how many weeks I could do this for?
I mean, yes, almost certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, what are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. There's Triv. It's just Triv.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that doesn't seem to understand the difference between Avatar Triv and... It's a new character I'm working on. Guy that doesn't understand the difference between general trivia and Avatar trivia.
And
right.
like all great characters, it needs to be explained.
Anyway, we have a listener question, Chris. Would you like it?
Yeah, man.
So, this is from one of our patrons, Hacksaw Unit. If you would also like to ask us a question to derail this podcast at the end, even more than I am currently doing myself with this, this trip thing, then you are welcome to go to the Patreon and give as little as $1 a month, and that will give you access to episodes a week early. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or whatever, you can already hear next week's episode right now by going over to the Spotify, unless you're listening to this in a few years' time, and then in which case, obviously, all the episodes are available. But you can head over there and get episodes a week early.
But we'd still like your money, no doubt.
What's that?
But we'd still like your money, no doubt.
Yeah, but we're still probably shilling for our Patreon, so you can go support us over there and get, week early episodes of whatever we decide to do in 2024 once this finishes. So Hacksaw Unit asked us a question this week, and you can do the same. Like I said, you'll get a shout out, and we'll answer your fun question at the end of the episode. Only fun questions. Any not fun questions, out the window. Not dealing with that. But Hacksaw asked us a question. This is actually an old question that I had to save because it references Toph. And if you remember earlier in the season, someone asked us what would happen if it was Katara versus Lapis. And we sort of said Lapis would. She's very, very powerful. She would probably win.
Yeah. She
can remove the entire ocean and make a big column from it. Katara cannot do that. She's not that powerful. So in a similar vein, I'm reading from Hacksaw's comment now. In a similar vein, Steven-era crystal gems versus the Aang gang. So this is Garnet, Amethyst, Pearl, and Steven. So he says post-main series, pre-graduation. So I guess just after Change Your Mind. Versus Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Toph.
So we're not including Lapis.
We're not including Lapis or Peridot. Yeah, he gave an alternate way of us doing that, where he added 2 more members to the gang, but they're not regular members of the gang, so it didn't fit for me. So I've kept it to the 4 versus 4.
I think it's got to be
for balance.
I think it's got to be Steven's gang. I think they've got more. Then again,
yeah, you see, it isn't as uneven as it initially sounds, because initially you go like,
no, because I was going to say they've got more tricks up their tree. Amethyst can shapeshift. They can obviously fuse. Like they've got the tricks up their sleeve, but then the Avatar gang have a lot of tricks up their sleeves in terms of earthbending, waterbending, etc. So maybe tricks-wise, they're matched together. And I think
as well, if you're saying post-series for the Steven gang, then arguably you're saying post-series for the Aang gang too. At which case you can presume. I won't obviously confirm whether Aang gets this far or not, but you could take a good guess that Aang ultimately will master all 4 elements. So Aang.
Yeah, I'm sort of doing it. I'm doing it point for point. I'm doing it them now versus personally. Okay. I guess because there's so much unknown in terms of what his powers or what indeed their powers look like. But equally, they've all got a specialist skill, and sometimes, whilst that's very much the case for Steven's gang, it all merges. Aang actually fighting has always proved himself to never. Then again, by Change Your Mind, Steven's not. Steven's a kick-ass fighter too. You haven't got Connie.
No, they haven't got Connie. No, I think if it was power for power and they were actually legitimately fighting, I do think the crystal gems win on the basis of they actually can't be killed either.
Yeah, that's also very true. Good point.
they sort of they reform. So even if Aang and the gang could get a one up on them initially, that would wear them down. So I do think it's the crystal gems. But can I throw out an alternate? They don't fight at all. Stephen and Aang both being preference towards pacifism. They only fight when defending themselves. We'll just have a nice chat and work it out.
Yeah,
that's the actual answer, isn't it?
yeah. Very good point.
It was only when thinking about this that it occurred to me that those characters both have a very similar sort of approach. That they both want to talk before fighting. I mean, we even saw it in the episode we just reviewed.
They also are fundamentally both the lead characters in children's TV shows.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
Doctor Who and Harry Potter have the same approach.
I can't speak for everyone, but heroes that want to talk rather than fight is very much a recent animated TV phenomenon. Because let me tell you, when I was a kid watching, I don't know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatever, they'd see a bad guy and just start swiping swords at him. They wouldn't even be like, "Are you definitely a bad guy?" It was straight to violence, So, anyway, there you go. Question of the week. Thank you, Hacksaw Unit, for your question. If anyone wants to ask a question, like I said, you can head over to the Patreon, patreon.com/nothing-but-static to do so. Other ways you can get a hold of us, I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham on Twitter. YouTube.com/nothing-but-static UK if you want to subscribe or like any of the videos that this is on, if you listen to it elsewhere. That does help. Commenting on those if you have some thoughts of your own also helps, even if I don't get a chance to respond. The actual comment number itself shows a certain level of engagement, and YouTube pushes up the algorithm the more that people engage. So if you'd like a free way to support us, that's one of the ways. Another is that you could, of course, go over to like iTunes or Spotify or whatever your podcast app of choice is, and review us there, give us likes and stars and hearts or whatever system the podcast app of your choice uses for reviewing stuff. You can also go support Raphodraws, who supplies us with that app at sunset image that we have as the key piece of art for this podcast. You'll see it if you're looking at it on iTunes and stuff. It's beautiful and it's amazing, and Rapho does lots of other really great work. And you can get this. I think there's a Redbubble account where you can get some of it on T-shirts and stuff. There's a graphic novel. It's Instagram.com/Raphodraws, or if you go to launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws, there's like a list of like Rapho's Twitter and YouTube and Tumblr accounts there, and you can support Rapho in any way, even just by following. That helps. So go show Rapho some love. I think that's everything.
Yeah, I just want to clarify between season 7 and 8, the pay went up to 750,000 per episode. So yeah, it was 9 and 10, as you said, went $1 million, but they were still on fairly big bucks for season 8 as well. Yeah,
it's sort of like scaled as it went. Yeah. So they were.
Apparently, according to the Screen Rant article, even in the first season, they were getting 22,500 per episode, which is like, that's not too shabby.
No, that's a lot of money. Yeah. For a show that like reportedly sort of became a phenomenon sort of after the fact and wasn't initially a huge hit. That seems like a lot of money to pump into it. But there you go.
Well, according to this, bumped up to 40 for the second. And then go to 75 for season 3, 85 for series 4, and then that's when it started getting. Season 6 was 125,000, and then 7 to 8, 750, and then $1 million. It's a lot of dollar.
Yeah, it is. So apparently, according to the Avatar trove from this week, it was David Schwimmer that sort of encouraged them to negotiate as a team, which is what led to them getting that astronomical amount of money. So there you go.
Fair play to them.
Yeah, he seems like a smart guy. Does David Schwimmer? He seems pretty on them. Like he seems pretty on it. He seems like he's got his ducks in a row. Does David Schwimmer? He did then produce Run Fat Boy Run. I think he might have even directed it. So can't win them all. Can't win them all.
Don't know why you're criticising that movie, Dan. You own like 3 copies of it on DVD. So.
Very quickly, just to explain to people why I own multiple copies of a film I hate. A friend lent it to us. Watched it, did not like it, and then the box got damaged. I think we were moving at the time, and it got like crushed under something, and the plastic broke. So we bought a copy to replace it with, because I'm not a monster. I've broken someone else's property. I'm going to replace it, and then they didn't really want it back. So now I've got 2 copies of Run Fat Boy Run.
And I've always said that whenever I go around Dan's, and I haven't done it yet, but I'd like to try and sneak in
a third
additional copies of Run Fat Boy Run, so that there comes a point where one day Dan looks at his shelf and he's just like, I've got like fucking 5 copies of Run Fat Boy Run.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks so much for listening, guys. As always, we do really appreciate you supporting any of the stuff we make. I mean, people often say, like, although they'll sound to it like, oh, what ways we can support and stuff, and that's wonderful if you want to do that and take an active. But even honestly, the act of listening and checking us out and spending any time with us on these podcasts is a big deal to us. We love you all for it. So yeah, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to us bullshit about Avatar, Friends, Steven Universe, and Run Fat Boy Run. So yeah, thanks very much for everyone for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you guys next week when we sit down to discuss Bitter Work.